When I was a kid, bedtime was the worst part of my day. I wasn't scared of the dark itself. I was scared of what was in it. It started when I was 8. Every night, just after Mom tucked me in and turned off the light, I'd hear it. A soft, rhythmic scratching from beneath my bed. At first, I thought it was mice, or maybe the bed frame creaking. But it wasn't, because sometimes the scratching would stop, and then something would breathe. I told my parents, of course. Dad checked under the bed, shined a flashlight, even pulled everything out. Nothing there but dust and a few old toys. Mom said it was just my imagination, maybe a dream I was confusing with reality. But I wasn't dreaming. I never dreamed on those nights. I just lay awake, staring at the ceiling, too terrified to move. One night, I tried to trick it. I pretended to sleep, breathing slow and even. The scratching started as usual, soft and steady. Then it stopped. I felt the mattress dip just slightly, as though something had pressed a hand against it from underneath. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. I was paralyzed by the thought that if I made a sound, it would know I was awake. That's when I heard a voice, a whisper so quiet I almost convinced myself I imagined it. "Are you awake yet?" I didn't answer. I squeezed my eyes shut until tears leaked out. The whisper came again, closer this time, like it was right against the mattress. "I can see you." I must have passed out from fear, because I don't remember what happened after that. The next morning, I told my parents again. Dad lost his patience, told me to stop making up stories, and threatened to take away my nightlight. Mom said if I kept talking about it, I'd give myself nightmares. So I stopped telling them. Instead, I made rules for myself. Never let your feet dangle off the bed. Never look under the bed. Never ever answer when it talks to you. For years, the rules kept me safe. The scratching never stopped, but it never got worse either. By the time I was a teenager, I managed to convince myself it was just an overactive imagination from childhood. I almost forgot about the rules. Almost. Then, last week, my little brother moved into my old room. He's only 6. The first night I heard him crying through the wall. When I went to check on him, he was sitting upright in bed, wide-eyed and pale. "What's wrong?" I asked. He whispered, "Something under the bed keeps scratching, and it talked to me." My blood went cold. I tried to calm him down, told him it was just the house settling, the pipes, anything. But then he asked me something I'll never forget. "Why does it know my name?" That night, I didn't sleep at all. I sat awake in my own room, listening.
Around midnight, through the thin walls, I heard it, the faint, steady scratching, then silence. And then, in a voice I hadn't heard in years, raspy, too low to be human, I heard it whisper, not to him, not to me, but to both of us, "Bedtime." I don't know what to do. My parents still won't believe us. My brother refuses to sleep in that room now. The bed is empty, but the scratching hasn't stopped.
When I was 7, my mother told me never to look under the bed after dark. Not don't go under the bed. Not don't put things under the bed. Specifically, don't look. I thought it was just one of those weird parental rules, like not leaving the fridge open too long. But she said it with such seriousness that I obeyed without question. As a kid, I made up stories about what might be there. Monsters, sure. But sometimes, lying awake at night, I'd hear faint sounds, scratching wood, whispering like wind, but only when the lights were out. When I asked my mother, she just said, "If you don't look, it can't see you." That should have scared me more than it did. One night, after a nightmare, I rolled out of bed to grab my stuffed bear from the floor. In the half-light, I almost bent down to peek under. The thought hit me, what if I break the rule? My heart thudded. I crawled back under the blankets without my bear. By the time I was 12, I had mostly forgotten, but sometimes, late at night, I'd feel it. Pressure, like someone lying flat on their back directly beneath me. Breathing so slow, I thought I imagined it. Then, one summer night, I woke thirsty. I swung my legs off the bed, and the instant my feet hovered over the dark gap beneath, something moved. A soft drag, like fingernails trailing across the carpet. I yanked my legs back up and sat frozen until morning. Years passed. I grew up, moved out. First apartment, first job, first nights alone. The memory of that rule came back the first time I set up my new bed. There was just enough clearance to store boxes underneath, but I couldn't. Instead, I shoved the frame flat against the floor so there was no gap at all. Still, sometimes, around midnight, I'd wake to faint scratching against the wood. Last month, I stayed at a friend's place while my own apartment was fumigated. His guest room had an old twin bed with plenty of space underneath. I laughed nervously at the thought, then reminded myself I was an adult. That night, I dreamed I was 7 again. My mother leaned over me, whispering, "Don't look under the bed. It's waiting for you." I woke drenched in sweat. The scratching was back. I stared at the ceiling, refusing to glance down. Hours passed. Then, just as I began to drift, I felt the mattress dip, like something shifting its weight beneath me. A whisper rose from under the bed, impossibly close. "I can see you now." I didn't sleep the rest of the night. In the morning, I packed and left without telling my friend why. I bought a new bed frame, solid, no space underneath. I thought that would solve it. But last night, I woke at 3:12 a.m. The mattress dipped. Breathing echoed in the darkness, and then, slowly, I felt fingers curl up from between the mattress and the frame, pressing against my back through the sheets. I stayed perfectly still, choking down a scream, heart hammering. The fingers lingered, then withdrew. The scratching started again, not from beneath this time, from inside the mattress. Now I'm writing this with every light on. I haven't slept in 2 days. My back still feels the weight of those fingers. I finally understand what my mother meant. It isn't what's under the bed that matters. It's what's been waiting inside it all along.
When I was a child, I had a ritual before bed. Brush my teeth, say goodnight to my parents, climb under the covers and wait for Mom to flick the light switch by the door. Every night she'd smile and say, "Good night, sweetheart, don't let the bed bugs bite." Then darkness. I didn't realize until much later that something else said goodnight too. The first time it happened, I was 9. After Mom shut the door, I heard her footsteps fade down the hallway. But a moment later, a voice whispered from the corner of my room, "Good night." It wasn't Mom's voice. It was low, shaky, like a throat full of gravel. I froze under the blanket. My eyes darted toward the corner, but the shadows were too thick. Nothing moved, nothing breathed. I convinced myself it was the house settling, or my imagination. The next night, I heard it again. Good night. This time, it came from under the bed. I remember gripping my stuffed bear so tight its button eye popped off. I didn't sleep until morning. I begged my parents to let me keep a lamp on, but they refused. "You'll never rest if it's bright," they said. They had no idea how wrong they were. Weeks went by. The whispers never stopped. Sometimes they came from the closet, sometimes the ceiling, once even from right beside my pillow. Always the same word, always the same rattling voice, "Good night." I made new rules for myself, the kind only kids believe in. If I stayed perfectly still, it wouldn't come closer. If I didn't answer, it would lose interest. If I pulled the blanket over my head, I was safe. The rules worked until they didn't. One night, I awoke to the sound of breathing, heavy, slow, damp. It wasn't coming from the corner, or the closet, or the floor. It was coming from inside the blanket with me. Before I could scream, the whisper brushed my ear.
Good night. I blacked out. When I woke, the sun was shining, and my blanket was neatly tucked under my chin. I almost convinced myself it had been a nightmare, until I noticed tiny black fingerprints pressed into the fabric, smudges that trailed from the pillow down to the floor. I didn't sleep in that room again. My parents thought I was being dramatic, but eventually they let me crash on the couch. I never explained why. How could I? Years passed. I grew up. I told myself it had been sleep paralysis or night terrors or the tricks of a child's mind. Last week, my daughter turned 9. We tucked her in together, my wife and I, and turned off the light. She smiled and said, "Good night." From the hallway, as we pulled the door shut, I heard it, that same rattling whisper I'd buried in memory. Good night. I froze. My wife didn't react. She didn't hear it, but my daughter did. Her eyes flicked to the corner of the room. She clutched her stuffed rabbit so tight I heard the seams creak. We left the room, and she didn't say a word. Neither did I, because I know the rules. Don't move, don't speak, don't pull the blanket away. And I know what happens when you break them.